And good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Let's Talk. And today we'll be talking about a very, very important topic, elder abuse. And believe me, elder abuse is very much alive in Newfoundland and Labrador. Our weekly Let's Talk sessions are supported by United Way Newfoundland and Labrador, and we are forever grateful to them for giving us the resources to do these Zoom sessions. Before I introduce today's speakers, I just want to cover a few housekeeping with everyone. First, as I already mentioned, if everyone could make sure that your mics are muted to block out outside noises, that would be great. If anyone needs closed captioning, you could just press on the CC closed captioning button on the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions or comments as we go through the presentations, just put them in the chat box also at the bottom and press chat. And then over on the side, you will find a place to put your comments and questions. And at the end of the presentations, I'll be going through some of those questions and comments and asking them of our speakers. And just in case anybody wasn't aware of this or missed the fact on the registration, this session is being recorded, okay? And once we get it downloaded to YouTube, I'll be sending the links to everyone in case you need them for future reference. Seniors NL has been working towards the prevention of elder abuse since the organization was established. And that work led eventually to the formation of the Provincial Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse. Today, we have over 150 organizations and individual members of the network. And with February, I'm not sure if everyone was aware of this or not, but February is Violence Prevention Month. And so we wanted to start the month off with talking about a very important piece of violence prevention. And that is, that of course is elder abuse and the supports that are available out there for victims of abuse. And it's also an example of some of the work that the Newfoundland and Labrador Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse is doing towards the prevention of elder abuse and violence in Newfoundland and Labrador. Now, before I introduce today's speakers, I would like everyone to do a poll that we have here. I'm going to have to push this down. And I have 4 little questions here. There are 4 questions, so you could scroll down by pulling down on the gray line at the side. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to respond to these questions.
Mary, I don't see the poll. Oh, there it is. Sorry, it just popped up. Thanks. Just showed now, so give it another few minutes.
Can everyone see the poll? Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm going to end that now. I see answers are still coming in there. Okay, let's see what we got. Share results. Do you know the different kinds of elder abuse? And 76% of you said yes, 5% no, and 19% not sure. Do you know how to report actual or suspected elder abuse? 62% said yes, 14% said no, and 24% are not sure. Do you know what supports there are for seniors who are being or have been abused? 43% said yes, 16% no, and 41% are not sure. So Renee, you have your work cut out for you today. Do you think there is elder abuse in your community? 89% say yes, 0% said no, and 14% are not sure. So obviously, while a lot of you do know about the different types of elder abuse, there is still information that people need, particularly about supports and the supports that are available. And we should all know how to report, okay? So we'll be certainly focusing on those. Take this down. And now I'm going to share my screen again, and we will introduce today's speakers. And here is one happy police officer. April Gavel is in her 16th year with the RCMP and has been in the role of community outreach within the Indigenous and Community Policing Unit of RCMP NL for the past 2 years. Since being back in Newfoundland and Labrador from her first posting, Escazone, Nova Scotia, April has been posted to Burgeo, Channel Port Basque, and the RCMP recruiting section. April currently has overarching responsibility for building and nurturing relations with key strategic community partners of RCMP NL, such as visible minority groups, violence prevention committees, crime prevention groups, the Law Enforcement Torch Run, the Children's Wish Foundation, and Seniors NL. She is a resource to all detachments and employees on a spectrum of areas involving youth and the community. April actively participates on her own initiative in a multitude of community events, always promoting a positive public image of the RCMP. And she also volunteers on the Thrive Board of Directors and as an aide-de-camp to the current Lieutenant Governor, Judy Foote. Welcome, April. And our next speaker is Renee Byrne, and Renee is the Program Supervisor with Victim Services, the Department of Justice and Public Safety. Renee is a social worker by training and has been employed with Victim Services since 1994, and she's been in her current position since 2011. In this position, Renee provides clinical support and supervision and is responsible for the overall management of services and programs delivered by 24 victim services regional coordinators who provide a range of direct services to victims of crime in 11 offices across the province. So indeed, both of you are doing very valuable services for the community, and there's a lot of work on your plate. We're going to start off with April, I think, and April is going to focus her presentation on elder abuse itself. Okay, April, I will take my screen down and you can start sharing yours.
Hi, everybody. Let me get this set up.
It always takes a couple of minutes to do this.
Here we are. Well, I hope everybody's having a good day. I'm happy to be here to talk about such an important, I guess, subject or issue, whatever it may be. It's very important that we talk about this issue. I guess I'll start by what is elder abuse. Each year, thousands of older people are abused, neglected, exploited many times. Many victims are people that are older, frail, vulnerable most of the times. A lot of the times it's because they can't help themselves, or because it's just they depend on other people so much to meet their needs that they have. Um, Abusers are older adults mostly, both male and female. So we really don't see whether it's females or males. It's just, we see a variety of it. So it's not just one or the other. Um, what is what is the definition, I guess? It's a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action occurring within a relationship where there's an expectation of trust, and it causes harm and distress in an older person. So this is actually what elder abuse really is. Today I'm going to talk about the different types of elder abuse, some of the indicators that we can see, and hopefully by the end of it we'll realize how very important it is that we report what goes on when we see it, or when we suspect things. So it's very important. The first type of elder abuse that we normally see is neglect. Usually what I mean by neglect is you're refusing or your failure to fulfill any part of a person's obligation or duty to an elderly person. That includes like their basic living activities or shelter, clean clothes, personal hygiene, keeping that up, not getting access to good medical care, good food, good meals, dehydration, like not getting the proper health and nutrition. A lot of the times it's protection from danger. So this is what I mean by neglecting an older person and what their needs and what their rights are. Most of the times, the cases that we're seeing now that are mostly high risk. A lot of times it's understaffed nursing homes, or it's just their caregivers are so overworked that they're not getting the proper care that they need. Neglect can also be in the form of, like, if you have a younger child that's looking after you, or you have your husband or spouse, due to your physical limits or your mental capacity, they may be looking after your needs as well. So it can go in any of those categories, I guess. The next type of abuse is physical abuse. This is any use of force against a person, like whether you could injure the person, cause them physical pain, or even impairment. A lot of the times we may see simple things of unexplained injuries is what we see typically, and it kind of raises our awareness to, okay, there must be something going on here more than meets the eye. You may see things like maybe broken bones or even burns. You know, signs of self-treated injuries that may go. They don't want to go to the doctor to, get help for an injury they may have because they don't want to talk about the issue of what happened to them. So when you see things like this, then you know that there's possibly an explanation as to, there's probably more going on than meets the eye. The next type of abuse is emotional abuse. A lot of the times people say that, emotional abuse can be worse than physical abuse. And we see that a lot, and it causes a lot of mental health issues, a lot of anguish, pain, distress, through verbal or nonverbal acts. That's usually what emotional abuse is all about. A lot of the times, when we do things that are emotionally wrong for a person, then, people seem to take it pretty hard. Their sleeping patterns gets messed up. It causes people to want to isolate and not be around other people. So, emotional abuse can be worse than physical. We always hear that. So the next type we see a lot of is sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is non-consensual sexual contact of any kind with an elderly person. Um, and this also includes, we see this not very often, but we have seen it from time to time, taking, I guess, advantage of the person because of dementia or Alzheimer's, and people think they're going to get away with it. Or there may be another disability that's preventing them from, I guess, consenting to the sexual acts. So, if you see, I'll actually, when I get to my next slide, I'll talk about some of the indicators of this. But a lot of the times we see like pain in the genital area, pelvic injuries, bruising in the private areas, or bleeding, those types of things. And usually a lot of the times they just may not want to go to the hospital because they don't know how to explain it, or they're too ashamed or embarrassed to talk about it. So, but a lot of times it's picked up by family members. They see bleeding, wondering what's happening, or sometimes a doctor may pick up on it if they go for the regular checkup. So the next type of elder abuse that we see, and we really see this a lot, is the financial part of it. The worst thing about financial abuse is it's so hard for police anyway to try to prove it. A lot of the times it's family members as well. So, a lot of the times seniors don't want to say anything about it because they know it's their family members. What we mean by financial abuse, it could be illegally or improperly using a senior's funds, like their money in their bank accounts, using their property or taking their assets. Patterns that you may see are like missing belongings or property. They may be discussing financial arrangements, but there's no documentation to know what they're even talking about. There may be money missing out of their accounts, and the worst part about it is a lot of the times the reason why financial is, like I said earlier, a lot of the times they're being taken advantage of by like even a family member, a child or grandchild that's taking care of their financials. And this is what makes it so difficult to try to, well, a lot of the times they just don't want to report it. So, and it makes it pretty difficult then to investigate it when you really know at the end of the day what's happening. I mean, we've seen it all in our families, like, money goes missing, or, when the person finally passes away, there's no money in their bank account when they know, they're basically on a fixed income, their house is paid for, it's just their basic needs. And I guess like a telephone bill and a TV bill. So where's all their money going? So, that's usually how it ends up, and people start asking questions after the fact. But so, as I said earlier, adult children are the most often the perpetrators of this, followed by family members and spouses. So, another one too that I'll probably talk about later on, I mentioned a little bit about it in my previous slide, was institutional abuse that some elders deal with. Sometimes it's a major concern, and particularly since most families, a lot of people just don't have the ability, I guess, to take care of their older parents. So a lot of times they have to put them in an home, or seniors care home, whatever you want to call it. So, that's what makes it so difficult. And a lot of times it's because of, as I mentioned earlier, it's just the center's understaffed, and you're just not seeing the signs quickly enough in order to, I guess, deal with the issues. So, other indicators of abuse, like all the different abuse that I spoke about in my previous slide. Another indicator may be that they don't want to stay at home with a family member, or if a friend is visiting. A lot of times you may say, God, that's weird. Like, why not? Maybe it's a sign that when they're alone with these people, that things are happening and they don't want to say anything about it. You may notice a change of behavior or appearance. They may, just because We talk about all the emotional abuse, physical abuse that I talked about earlier. It may get to the point where they're so down that their mental health is starting to be affected by it. They don't care about their appearance anymore. You know, it's just their behavior changes. They don't care about things anymore when they typically would. So these are all indicators that maybe there's something going on. As I mentioned earlier, you may see a lot of unexplained injuries that you're wondering, that's a bit weird. It could be from a simple push or something like that, which is it's all physical abuse. I already spoke about financial situations. If you notice that there's a lot of conflicts between the elder and the caregiver, it may be because there's something going on that we don't know about. You know, if you walk into a situation and they're fighting all the time or they're arguing, it's probably because there's not a good relationship there, something's going on. Lack of basic care, as I mentioned earlier, you'll notice that, you know, their nutrition is not up where it should be. You know, they don't have their needs, they're not getting to their doctor's appointments on time. And these are all basic, usually is just neglect on the part of the caregiver. As I mentioned earlier, fear, anxiety, depression, isolation, these are all, you know, the mental, I guess, fallout of abuse that seniors may go through. Um, a lot of the times they may withdraw, like if they used to go to bingo nights, now all of a sudden they don't want to. But this is I guess, an effect of it, because they start to isolate themselves and they don't want to be around other people because maybe other people are starting to see the signs and they're being questioned as to what's going on. So all these they're all indicators that maybe there's something going on in their lives, and a lot of the times they just don't want to talk about it. If you guys have any questions as I'm going, I'm pretty sure Mary is taking any raised hands there too as well. I guess you're all wondering too, obviously I'm a police officer, so what is it that we see normally when it comes to senior abuse? I can tell you now, I went to get a stat of the number of, I guess, elder abuse cases that we see. And I tell you, the numbers aren't very high, but I think a lot of the reasons are is because they don't know how to report, or they don't know how to report, you know. So, but typically what we see, the different types of abuses, these are the charges that can lead from all the different situations that we see. So uttering threats, you know, if you threaten the person to cause death or bodily harm to any person, this obviously is threatening a person. If someone threatens to burn, destroy, or damage their property, that's also a criminal offense. You know, if you say, okay, I'm going to kill your, I don't know, your pet dog or something like that, those are all uttering threats that people that we may see. So the next one is an assault or physical abuse. Any unwanted application of force whatsoever on another person, it constitutes an assault. So, you know, if you're a caregiver and you're in this type of situation, obviously every situation, the totality of it depends on how everything plays out when it comes to court process, if it's being reported. So every situation is different and is all based. So I know people may have certain questions about, well, what about this or what about that? But, you know, we take into account the whole situation and what's all involved there. So in case you're wondering how it would normally go. Intimidation, that's another, I guess, offense that we see quite a bit in these types of situations, is like the act of using violence or threats to say, well, if you don't do this, then I'm going to take your money, or if you don't do this, then I'm not going to take you to your friend's house tonight to have tea and coffee or whatever. So intimidation is a very big one as well, and that also is an offense that someone can be charged with. When it comes to financial abuse, those types of things, forgery, we see that a lot, and different frauds. So like, I don't know, maybe signing checks, using like passwords to get into their bank accounts when you're not doing it for their purposes, you're doing it for the purposes of getting a benefit for your own self. So, you know, that's usually a big one that we do see is forgery, fraudulent activities, those types of things. And theft that goes along with it, taking money, you know, taking their personal possessions, those types of things. So theft is another big one as well. One that we see quite a bit is failure to provide the necessities of life. Some people may call that neglect. So, you know, this means someone under your care or caregiver, they basically, you don't provide them everything that they're supposed to have, you know, or making them do things that they you don't have no right telling them to do. So, you know, if you're not providing food, nutrition, basic water, basic health care, giving them access to that, then this is an offense called failure to provide necessities of life. That can include a care home as well, or a care worker not providing the right needs that the person needs. So this can all happen. I always get a lot of questions surrounding the fact of like care homes and what happens there. So if anybody have any questions, then feel free to ask me about those things. But these are this is the law, and these are most offenses that we see in most, I guess, elder abuse cases. So, and we'll get to the big part. Like, we don't have a lot of numbers or a lot of reported numbers, and that's because a lot of these cases, they don't get reported. The main reason is their fear of retribution. You know, as we get older, I guess, our cognitive abilities start to decline. So, which may leave us, you know, we just may not be able to, I guess, report their abuse or know how to do it. So a lot of the times, seniors are reluctant to talk about what is happening to them in fear of retribution. This is true in a lot of like home settings that we see, because, or they may be in a nursing home as well. It's hard to report someone when you are totally dependent upon someone. And this is what makes it so hard to report. You know, they may ask such questions as, well, who's going to take care of me after I report this situation? And, you know, will my caretaker be angry with me? You know, will they be investigated? Will the abuser know that I reported them? And then comes the fear of, well, if I report them and nothing happens, am I going to get it worse back? So these are the reasons why people don't report for the most part. You know, and a lot of times they may not report that another resident is being abused, because, you know, they're worried that their caretaker would be disappointed, or they may be in a nursing home and then they're afraid that they're going to get kicked out, and where are they going to go? So it's just a fear of retribution of what's going to happen at the end of it. So a lot of the times staff in a nursing home or a care home may not report either, because they know they're reporting their coworkers. So, and sometimes they may fear that their supervisor may not listen to them. So sometimes that may happen as well, and or they're afraid that their supervisor may take the abuser's side. So there's a lot of reasons why it don't get reported. Another one for seniors is just the pure shame of it. You know, they feel shame that they could let something happen to them like this. They are ashamed that they could not defend themselves, or that someone took advantage of them. You know, we all want to think that we have our own little bit of dependence. So when this happens, a lot of the times they just feel shamed. So they don't want to report. And the big one is just not knowing the process. What happens if I report? What happens to me? Like, you know, so, you know, most of the times, elderly people never deal with the police in their lifetime. So just the fear of that alone, having to deal with the court process or having to speak to a police officer, they get their back against the wall and they just, oh, forget about it, things will get better. So, which is the most unfortunate part about it, because nobody needs to go through this. And of course, many of the times it's their family members that they're reporting on. and nobody wants to get their family members in trouble. And you always think at the end of the day it's going to get better, but it don't get better. It just continually gets worse and worse. So their abuser gets away with one thing and they continue, usually they spiral out of control eventually. So, and of course they don't know what their options are in the legal system and where they go from here, how are they going to be treated? What's the next stage? I guess bottom line is if you see it, the resources to report to, obviously you can call the police, report it to a supervisor, just report it to someone that you feel that you can trust to do something about it. So I guess having said that, I'll send it over to Renee to talk about the next stages, I guess, and victim services can help. So thanks, everybody.
April, thanks very much. I couldn't help but thinking while you were talking how confused that an older person must feel when they're in an abusive situation. They probably they know that this should not be happening to them.
Yeah.
Yet they don't want to report for a whole list of reasons. But then they've got to be thinking, I'm letting this person get away with that. Is that person going to go and do it to someone else? It must be really in conflict, because it is, when we let someone get away with whatever, we are just kind of giving them to go ahead and do it, and somehow.
But I guess they feel at the end of the day they haven't. Where do they turn once it happens?
Yeah. One of the people online here talked about the criminal code not containing a specified definition of elder abuse, and apparently the Liberal government committed to amending the code to add a definition. Do you know, April or Renee, even what the status of that proposed amendment is, or is anyone looking at it anymore?
No, I had no idea. Usually, no.
That would be interesting.
I know they spoke about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone else was remarking that in many cases when reporting is done, there's no subsequent follow-up or action taken.
Yeah.
I would think that's probably because the person refuses to press charges.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, we're talking about a lot of the times it's a person's family member that does this. And once we start an investigation, sometimes the person is not able to, sometimes they're just not able to, I guess, tell us what's going on with them. And that makes it really hard for us to try and do anything. Unless there's a witness that sees it, someone that's willing to speak up. And a lot of times it's family members and they just want to stay out of it.
Yeah.
And this is why elder abuse is so, it's upsetting, to be honest with you, because you know what's going on, but nobody wants to say anything about it because there's always family involved.
Yeah.
And it makes it very hard for us because once you get to the next stage, the court process, if you don't have a statement or if you don't have that evidence, then I'm telling you, it makes it really hard.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we know what's going on, right?
I think a lot of abuse too is probably learned experience or lived experience. I mean, people grow up in abusive households, right?
Yeah.
Go and then they in turn abuse or are more complacent about accepting abuse. It's hard. I mean, that could be. We could go on forever with this.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Renee, April, maybe you can take down your screen, and Renee will put yours up, and we will hear from Renee talking about victim services.
Okay, I got it. Okay. Stop sharing. Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Now, Renee, go for it. Share screen. Good. Renee, have we lost you?
Are you seeing my screen?
Okay, yep.
Okay, just bear with me. I'm trying. Are you seeing just, what are you seeing on your screen? Because I can't see what you see.
Your first slide.
Just the slide itself?
Yep, Newfoundland Labrador Victim Service. I could see some people at the top, but all of our screens are probably looking different. But
Okay,
your slide is up. Yeah.
I'm just trying to, sorry about this. Okay, so everything's okay?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So good morning. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to, and it's the first time April and I have presented together. I actually hadn't met April up till probably a month ago, maybe. So it's been wonderful to, yeah, connect in that way and to tag team to present this information to you. So I appreciate seniors and now inviting us. So as was mentioned, I work with Victim Services and we're a program of the Department of Justice and Public Safety. And as April mentioned, for making a report to the police or the thought of going to court can be very intimidating and scary for most people, whatever our age. But particularly would that be the case when someone you love or someone you're dependent upon has harmed you, or taken advantage of you. So I wanted to provide you this morning with information on the support that our program provides to those who have been assaulted, victimized, or taken advantage of. And so I'll provide an overview of our program, how we can assist, and hopefully towards the end address some common questions or fears or concerns that people have as once they make a report to the police. So as I mentioned, we are a program of the Department of Justice and Public Safety. We're a free, voluntary, confidential service. We're located throughout Newfoundland and Labrador. We have 9 offices on the island and 2 in Labrador. So we serve a very vast region. And we've been around since the early 90s. We work closely with the police and with the Crown Attorney's Office, but also with community organizations and other resources, both in government and nonprofit. Oh, and I meant to start off by saying hello. It was nice to see familiar faces. Mary Cleary, who used to work with adult probation. Nice to see you, Mary. And also Rosemary Lester, who, of course, I worked with throughout my career as well in her work with the Seniors Resource Center, as it was called then. Thank you very much. It's great to see you. So our program is based on some fundamental principles, and that is that victims should be treated with courtesy, compassion, and respect. Of course, that they should suffer the minimum of inconvenience from their involvement with the criminal justice system. We might think that goes without saying, and being a victim of a crime, of course, if anything, you've been inconvenienced to say the least. But people can suffer what is sometimes called secondary victimization through their involvement with professionals or with the court system. So through our services, we try to minimize that by providing people with information in the hopes that that will empower them to make decisions that they feel are best for themselves. We also recognize that victims are a very important part of the criminal justice system. If we don't have victims who are willing to come forward to the police and then to testify in court against people who have abused or assaulted them or taken advantage of them in some way, then we don't have a criminal justice system, do we? Because then charges don't proceed, police don't have someone who's willing to give a statement, and Crown attorneys don't have someone who can testify in court. So our services, we hope, empower people, provide them with the information and the skills that they need so that they can participate in the process. And throughout the last few decades, there certainly has been a recognition nationally and internationally that we have to provide meaningful services to victims if we expect them to participate. And they have a right to those services. And in 2015, Canada brought in the Victims' Bill of Rights, and that gives victims the right to information, participation, protection, and restitution. So that's now enshrined in legislation. And if anyone working or coming into contact with the victim of a crime, such as the police or our program or the court system, does not uphold those rights, then a victim can make a complaint, depending upon who it is, that didn't uphold their rights, to say, hey, my rights, my rights to information weren't upheld here. So that we're all held responsible and accountable for our actions, and not to forget about the victim in this whole process. Because in many ways, the system does focus on the accused, on the offender. We all recognize that, and it has to in many instances, because it's the accused person who has, whose rights we want to ensure are upheld and respected. But at the same time, we have to give consideration and attention to the victim, the person who has been victimized, who has lost due to the crime. So our services, we hope, provide some of that. Certainly can't do it all, but certainly some of it. So who do we provide services to? We work with any victim of any sort of crime. So we work with people who've been victims of break and enter into their home. They may have been the victim of a theft, an armed robbery. They may work in a store or a business that was the victim of robbery. We work with victims who of intimate partner violence, so they've been assaulted or abused by their partner. Those who've been victims of sexual assault, either as an adult or even as a child, they might have suffered childhood abuse. Instances where there's been a death as the result of the offense, such as in a homicide, or it could be an impaired driving crash where there was a death or an injury as a result. Any crime that you can think of, we would be working with those individuals if they want our services. But we're a small program. There's only 24 coordinators providing services to our very vast province in 11 offices. So like in all our work, we have to prioritize. So our priority is given to those who are victims of personal thought injury, violent offenses, such as partner violence, sexual assault, and other types of assault. But really it comes down to the individual and what's happened to them and how they are reacting or have been affected by what happened, and what services they feel that we can provide that would be helpful to them. So for example, there could be someone who's been the victim of a theft who is severely traumatized because of that offense due to their personal makeup, their vulnerabilities, their past history of other things that have happened to them. And they might want all the services we can offer, whereas someone who's been the victim of partner assault may want little or no service from us. So it really depends upon the individual. And we let them guide us as to what services they feel could be helpful. So a lot of our focus has been on when a report has been made to the police and going through court. But our service is available to individuals even if they don't want to report to the police. So that's something really important to keep in mind. We recognize that everybody who we work with has their own unique situation, their own unique makeup and history. So we really strive to be client-centered and meet people where they are and let them help us determine how we can best help them. So individuals can access some, all, or none of our services. It will be entirely up to them because it is voluntary. Some may only want updates on what's happening in court or with the police investigation, while others may want everything we can offer, referrals to other services, counseling. They may call us on a regular basis for support. and that's absolutely fine. And we work with some people for a short period, and it might be only over the phone, and others we may be working with for many years, depending upon the nature of the offense and the court matter that they may have been involved in. So we have some clients that we've been working with for 20 years or more because they were involved in an incident quite serious in nature. The person charged was sentenced to a period of incarceration. And so there may be follow-up after court. So our services are there anytime after an incident has occurred, whether or not someone's gone to the police, and we can be involved long after court is over. Our services are provided, we provide services to adults and children, but for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to focus on the services we offer to adults. And for us, an adult is considered 16 years of age and over. That's just how our program was developed when it started back in the early 90s. So anyone who's 16 and over can access our services as an adult, meaning they don't need consent from anyone or permission from anyone to access our service. And as I mentioned, even if someone hasn't made a complaint to the police, they can still access our services. Some people don't want to go to the police for all of the reasons that April mentioned. And so we can talk to them about what their options are if they decide they don't want to go to the police. Or they may have questions about, well, if I do go to the police, what will happen? Will they have to do this? Will they have to speak to so-and-so? We can help them in talking to them about that and providing that information, and then looking at what their options are, helping them weigh out what might be best for them. And we're not here to tell them what they should do, but more provide information so they can decide what's best for them in their life situation. It's not for me to say you have to go to the police or you should report, although inside I might feel that way. I'm not in their shoes. And as April mentioned, when you're dependent upon someone, when this is your caregiver, then again, we leave it to them to decide, unless of course the law or legislation requires that we make a report, which in some instances has to be done. So it's voluntary, and people can access services at any point. And it is confidential, so we don't talk about our contact with anyone that we're working with, again, unless the law requires that we do. Now, of course, we would make that report. So even if the police make a referral to us on someone's behalf, we don't go back to the police officer then to report about our contact with that person. It's all kept confidential within our program, so people can be assured of that privacy. So one of the services we provide is information, lots and lots and lots of information. And I'll share later our website, and a lot of our pamphlets and booklets are online, but we also provide hard copies to people if they would like them. And again, if any of you connected are interested in any of our resource material, all you need to do is let Seniors NL know, and I would be happy to send any resource material that you'd like out to you, as much as you might need, depending upon if you're working in a with an organization and you'd like a number of pamphlets. Feel free to let them know. So people have questions and need information about the court process and the criminal justice system. So we provide information both a lot over the phone and in person, verbally, but also in written form to people about the court process. We've developed booklets and pamphlets that are hopefully user-friendly and in language that people can understand. Because when you become involved with the court system, that's a language in and of itself, right? They have their own lingo and legal jargon. It can be difficult to translate that. So we've tried to do that and put it in plain language so that people can understand the process. And we do feel knowledge is power. So the more knowledge people have and information, then the better they're able to understand what can be a very complex system and process, and the better they are to participate. So lots of information about court, because most people's idea of court comes from TV. It comes from Judge Judy, and it comes from shows that I would watch, Matlock, There was another one, but it's also based on the US system of justice, which, and again, it's TV drama, and that's not how court works. And the Canadian system of justice is very different from the US system of justice. So again, we provide information, practical information to people about court, such as why it is that some people have juries and some people don't. What's the difference between a preliminary inquiry and a trial? Or what's the role of the Crown Attorney? All information that we can provide to people to help them understand the process a little bit better. We also provide people with specific information or updates on what's happening with their court matter if a charge is laid. So we have access to the provincial court database, and we attend court frequently to provide people with updates on their specific case. Because years ago, what might happen is that I would make a complaint to the police and I would know nothing until I get a subpoena to tell me I have to be in court, not even knowing if a charge was laid. Well, all of that has changed, and victims can be updated on what's happening with their court matter. So once someone is charged, we can follow the matter as it goes through court and then provide them with updates on what's happening with their matter. And it can be, a quick phone call to say it was called today in court. The accused person didn't have a lawyer, so it was postponed for 2 weeks to give them opportunity to get that arranged. And sometimes, a lot of times, it's more than just providing the update. It's then talking them through how they feel about that and how they're doing and how they're coping, because many are anxious for it to get done and to be over. So we can help support them through that process, and also, reassuring people that they don't have to attend every court appearance, because some people think, oh, I'm going to have to go when the accused person goes, and no, they don't. Often the accused person has a lot of court appearances before the victim ever has to go inside of a courtroom. So again, that's information along the way that we can provide to people. We provide court preparation. So if someone does have to testify in court, then we offer to meet with them, or we can do it over the phone, especially in these COVID days, but we are seeing people in person. And we can tour an empty courtroom so they can see where they're going to be and where everybody else will be. Again, most people's idea around courtrooms and what they look like comes from TV or from what you see on the 6 o'clock news. And that's not often the reality of many of our courthouses and courtrooms in Newfoundland and Labrador. Our courtrooms are small, often much smaller than people expect. And so we tour the courtroom and provide that court preparation so that people will know where to go on the day they need to come, where they're going to wait, when they go into the courtroom, where the witness stand will be, and practical things such as, it's okay to ask for a glass of water, and it's okay to get upset and cry, and to ask for a tissue or to ask for a break. We'll show you where the bathroom is. Very practical things that can help people feel more comfortable when they go into court. We talk a lot about relaxation techniques, how to keep yourself relaxed, because it can be very anxiety provoking, or you could get mad when being asked questions by the defense lawyer. That could be upsetting to you if you feel like you're being accused of something yourself, or you're not being believed. So we review how to deal with those, strategies for dealing with that. We don't talk about the evidence. Oftentimes, many times, we don't know the details, and we'll never know the details of what happened to somebody until we're sat in court listening to their testimony. We don't need to know. We don't need to know what happened to people, the details of it, in order to provide our services. So that can be reassuring for people too, is you don't have to talk to us about what happened. Some people do, and they want to talk, but others don't want to. And that's perfectly okay. And when it comes to preparing for court, we don't want to talk about, and we're not going to talk about specific questions that you would be asked, because that wouldn't bode well for court, because we can't review questions with somebody as to what they would say in their testimony. Often with court preparation as well, we will arrange a meeting with the Crown Attorney. So the Crown Attorney is the person who takes all the evidence the police have collected, and it's their job to present it to the court. So they're not the victim's lawyer. And often sometimes they might make decisions that the victim is not even happy with, but it's their job to put the evidence before the judge so that the judge can decide whether or not there's enough evidence to find this person guilty. And so we often will arrange a meeting jointly with them so that the victim will have an opportunity to ask any questions or address any concerns they might have with the Crown Attorney. And then the Crown will provide them often with a copy of their statement so that they can review that as a refresher for them before they have to testify. And they, again, may discuss other matters concerning the trial that they want to review with the victim. But again, they're not going to go through question by question. Okay, I'm going to ask you this question, and then I'm going to ask you this. They'll just generally talk about how the trial will go. We also do have some funding available for meetings, for court preparation, because sometimes people are challenged with transportation in getting to us. So we can arrange, if it's in the St. John's greater area, we can arrange a taxi to come to the meeting. Or in other parts of Newfoundland, it might mean that they might have their own vehicle, but they would be reimbursed for mileage because they might have to drive an hour to get to the nearest courthouse or longer. So we do have some funding available to try and enable their attendance at those sorts of meetings. But we'll do it by phone wherever we need to as well. So we do, as much as we're able to, based on our availability, attend court with those that we're working with, so that we can be there on the day of court to provide support, to provide debriefing, to liaise with the Crown. We'll sit in the courtroom during testimony just to be that friendly, supportive face. We can't say anything, but we can be that face that can provide support. Of course, individuals can bring other people with them, but again, in these days of COVID, court does have restrictions now on how many are allowed in court. So sometimes there's only, one support person that might be permitted in a courtroom. But we find a lot of our work leads up to the day of court. That's what people are planning and preparing for. So we do attend wherever we can to provide that support on the day of testimony. I'll just briefly speak about victim impact statements. We are the program responsible for filing victim impact statements. So any victim of a crime has to be informed of their right to complete a victim impact statement. And this is a statement a victim can write if an accused person is found guilty, to talk about the impact that the offense has had on them physically, emotionally, financially, any fears for their safety or security they might have. So it's not a reiteration of the information they provided to the police about what happened. It's more about how they've been impacted by what happened. So there are guidelines around this, and there's a form that we provide to people, but we spend a lot of time talking to people about their right to do a victim impact statement. And if they choose to do one, then it has to be considered by the judge before the judge passes sentence on the accused person. And it's given to the Crown and it's shared with the defense. So a copy would be shared with the accused person as well. So we talk to people about where the copies would go, how it would be used, and what the risks and benefits, pros and cons would be for them in completing one. Because sometimes people don't want the accused to know how they've been affected. I don't want him to know that he had this impact on my life. Or he might feel that I'm even more vulnerable because of what I contain and put in the statement. And fair enough. And so we talk through that with people so they can make the decision on whether or not they want to submit a victim impact statement. And they can read it in court out loud to the judge if they wish, or they can have it read by the Crown Attorney in court. And we also provide funding for travel so that people can come and read their statement at the court hearing. So for some, for example, we've flown people out of Nain to Goose Bay so that they could be at the sentencing hearing where their victim impact statement would be read and considered. So, and we've flown people from other parts of the country back to the province so that they could be present for sentencing as well. So this slide just outlines some of our other services. We know, as I mentioned, that we're not going to be able to provide all for everybody's needs. So we do connect people with other services in the community and within government. We don't provide any long-term counseling ourselves, but we do have funding available for therapeutic counseling with counselors who are on contract with us for people that we're working with who qualify. So there's certain criteria that needs to be met. It's not lengthy or onerous. There's no financial assessment or anything like that. But if we're working with people and they identify that they would like to speak to a counselor about the impact of their victimization and their trauma, then we can refer them to a counselor in their area, and we would review that with them. We also realize that sometimes people have information needs regarding an offender's release if somebody was sentenced to a period of incarceration. So we link with the Parole Board of Canada as well as local correctional institutions to obtain that information for victims, because once someone's sentenced to a period of incarceration, we all know that if it's a sentence of a year in jail, that person likely is not serving a year in jail, 365 days. So we have what are called victim liaison officers in the prisons across the province who will provide victims with information on the release date, which could be 2/3 of the sentence in or even a third in, so that they will know, okay, this person's going to be back in my community, or it could be, at least back even on my street during that time frame. We also have funding available for lawyers for applications where necessary, but I won't get into all of the minutiae of that. And wherever we can, we try to educate people about our service and participate in events just like this one. So what we don't do, we don't provide services in instances where there's a sudden death, suicide, a car crash where there might be injuries or death, where there's been no criminal offense. So we focus, our service is for criminal offenses. And we also don't become involved in matters that are going through civil court or family court. Often there's a crossover. So we may be working with a victim of partner violence, for example, who also has to go through family court for divorce or separation proceedings, or even for child support or custody. So they may be involved with both systems, but our expertise is in the criminal court system. We really don't know much about the family or civil system. And so we would provide information on other resources that could provide someone with information about that process. And we don't provide legal advice. We know a lot about the court system. We can provide legal information, but we don't provide legal advice. We're not lawyers. We're not trained in that regard. So how can someone make a referral to our program? They can just call us. So if you feel that our service can be of benefit to you, then you can just call our the office closest to you, or you can call our provincial office, and 729-7970 is that number, and then that administrative assistant will put you in touch with the local office, or have someone from the local office call you. If you work for an agency or are calling on someone's behalf, you can call, and we also have paper referrals, but they're more for the police and the Crown. But I would say that if you're calling on someone's behalf, we would need their consent as an adult in order to reach out to them. So if you suspect that someone has been the victim of abuse and you call us wanting us to call them, we're not going to call them unless they have agreed for that to happen. We can provide you with information on how to best support them, but we would not be able to call them without them agreeing to us making that contact. And we would encourage you to provide them with our number so that they could reach out to us. And many people contact us by email as well. We have a provincial email that I check every day. And often people reach out to us with questions or with scenarios, just requesting help. Sometimes anonymously, they're wanting to know about support available. And so I'll respond to those to provide information as best I can, or again, to try and link people into the local office. Much of our work, as I mentioned, is done by phone, but we do in some instances visit people at their home if we're able, and if they can't get to us. Again, in these days of COVID, that's becoming more and more challenging. So we do a lot of our work by telephone. And sometimes people are involved with an organization or with another professional, and they want us to go there and meet them, and that's quite okay. We'll certainly do that if they're already involved with another professional and they would rather us go to them, and we certainly can do that. Most of our referrals come from the police, both the RCMP and the RNC, because they're mandated by legislation to make referrals to our program. So anytime they receive a report of violence or abuse, then they will make a referral to our program, and we will follow up with that person. Again, even if a charge is not laid, even if the person doesn't want the matter to go through court, we'll still follow up, because maybe there are services around safety planning that we need to discuss that would be helpful. Maybe they need information on their options, such as applying for a peace bond or applying for an emergency protection order, which is an order someone can apply for if they're in in a relationship with an abusive partner. So we can talk with them about their options outside of the police and the court if that's something they don't want to pursue. So just wanted to take a minute to address some common questions that we hear from people and that you may have or you may have heard in your work. So will I have to go to court? And a lot of these are going to have the same answer. Maybe, possibly, it all depends. So if the person who is charged pleads not guilty, then you would have to go to court to tell the judge about what happened. So the Crown Attorney cannot just use your statement and show that to the judge and that suffice or be good enough. That's not how court works. So they're not going to be able to just use the information you gave to the police. They will need you to go to court to provide information as to what happened. Of course, if the accused person pleads guilty and admits to what you alleged has happened, then you likely would not need to go to court nor to testify. So do I need to see the person who harmed me in court? Yes, in most cases. In just about all cases, the accused person is present. Part of our court preparation involves helping people strategize around how they'll deal with that, where we'll wait when they go into court, even how they will position their body so that they might not be looking at the accused person directly, but instead might look at the judge or might look at the lawyers. The criminal code also does have provision in some instances for testimonial aids to be used. And I didn't include any pictures of these, but they can be either screens or testimony through the use of video conferencing equipment in another room, or the use of having a support person close by, or even the exclusion of the public. Now, these are testimonial aids that are automatic for children for the most part, and for adults, an application has to be made by the Crown Attorney, and the judge has to agree to one of these aids being used. And the Crown would have to show that the witness has a particular vulnerability, and so without these aids would not be able to testify. So in our work with people, in our contact, that's a discussion that we would have with people around their testimony. And if they indicate to us that like, oh, there's no possible way I could do this. I'm under doctor's care and my doctor's recommending that I not, incur this stress and anxiety, then again, that's an option that we'll discuss with them and discuss with the Crown Attorney, but it's never guaranteed, and we could never guarantee that to anybody. So do I need a lawyer? No, if you're the victim of a crime, you don't need a lawyer unless you're going to partake in a civil suit against the accused person. But for criminal court, you do not need a lawyer. The Crown Attorney, while not the victim's lawyer, does represent the Queen or represents society. And so the victim would be a witness, a very important, integral witness for the Crown Attorney. And that's why we work closely with the Crown Attorney and liaise with them and do joint meetings with them, with the victim, so they have an opportunity to ask questions and get information. But a victim does not need their own lawyer in court. The Crown Attorney his job is to bring all that information forward. Will the person go to jail? That depends. And that is a concern of many people that we work with, many older people, because as April mentioned, it's often a family member, and they might not want any thought of them going to jail. Sometimes we hear, oh, they just need help. They have an addiction. They need help. Or they're just really angry and they need help to deal with their anger issues. We hear that a lot. So if someone we're working with is concerned about what the sentence would be, what the outcome would be, then again, we would arrange a meeting with the Crown Attorney to sit down and talk about that. Because the Crown Attorney will listen to what the victim has to say and take that into account. Now, the victim doesn't have final say, nor ultimate control over the process, and in many instances has little control. But the Crown Attorney will provide the opportunity for them to say what they would like to see happen, or provide information on the accused person if it's someone known to them, so that the Crown Attorney can take all of that information then in helping them decide what they would request on sentence. And in some instances, they have tailored what they have requested based upon what the victim has asked them to do. So in some instances, the victim may want no contact with this person. And so they might be put on an order to have no contact, stay away from the victim's home, have no contact with them directly or indirectly. In other instances, it could be a caregiver, family member, they might want contact. They might like, oh, I don't want you to prohibit them from having contact. So again, that's information important for the Crown Attorney to know. So then the Crown Attorney can tailor the request to that wherever possible. In some instances, they might not be able to adhere to what the victim is requesting, but at least it provides an opportunity for that discussion to happen. So will the media be present? This is often a concern for people because we all watch the 6 o'clock news and see CBC and NTV at court matters. And yes, the media does attend, but they don't attend all court matters. And typically they might look at what's happening in court in any particular region on any particular day. And they tend to report on something that's, for lack of a better term, I guess, newsworthy, what they feel will get, will be of interest to the viewing public. So they're not present on most court matters, really, but we can never guarantee that they won't be present on any court matter. We just don't know when they might be there. And unless there's a publication ban in effect, then they can report on a court matter and on the people involved. So it is possible that they could be there. So how can you help? April already talked about, making a report, and I will also say you can, refer them, provide them with information on what's available, what support and resources and services are available to them, to be present and be there and be a support for them, because in many instances, they may not want to report to the police until they're ready. Victims of partner violence. We are going to see older people who are victims of partner violence because they were younger people who were victims of partner violence. And a relationship that is violent doesn't stop because a person reaches a certain age. So this may be violence that they have been dealing with for many, many years. And we also know that most victims are abused 35 times or more before they make a report to the police. So what they need is support, and they need someone to listen without judgment, and we can be there for people to provide that support and assistance, and to have empathy for the situation that they're in, that sometimes they're caught between a rock and a hard place. How do you report on someone who is your caregiver? How do you tell the police that your son or daughter is stealing from you? This is your son or daughter. Sometimes people feel it's a reflection on them. That, well, what kind of parent was I that I raised a child who would then steal from me? We hear that as well. So we want to be understanding of people, to not pass judgment. And that's really one thing we strive to do in our services, is we never close the door on people. We work with a number of people who, even if they report it to the police or they start the court process, then say, I don't want to, it's too hard, it's too difficult, I can't do this. And if the charge doesn't proceed, then it's not for us to say, well, that's it, you had your chance. Don't come back to us. If something else happens, we'll told you so. Not at all. We're there to be supportive and to let them know, hey, if something else happens, if you think that we can be of assistance, then you know where we are. Please come back. And we've had people actually say that to us. You said something else might happen, because we try and talk to people about, okay, well, if something should happen again, people might, be in denial. Oh no, that won't happen again. They won't do that again. Well, if it should, please know that we're here to provide support. So sometimes people have come back and said, yeah, you were right. Something else did happen, and I remembered what you said, and now I'm back. And we're there to, again, listen without judgment. So this is our website, victimserviceshelp.ca. So there you'll find lots of information about court, about our services. All our pamphlets and brochures are there, links to other services provincially and nationally, and as well as contact information for each of our offices across the province, and our general email and provincial phone number that you can certainly feel free to reach out to at any point. This is the location of our offices across the province. This is where we are. In most of our offices, we only have 1 or 2 staff people. St. John's is the only office, of course, that has a larger staff complement. There are 7 regional coordinators providing services here, but otherwise, elsewhere, it's just 1 or 2 people. And this is my contact information. So my email is there. My telephone number, feel free to reach out at any time. And the other email is our general provincial email. So victimservices@gov.nl.ca. If you want to email at some point, just to ask a question, to pose a situation that you might come across or be dealing with yourself without even providing your name or other contact information, certainly feel free to do so. We want to make sure that people are accessing information and support in whatever way that works for them. So thank you very much for your time and attention. I'll pass it back to Mary and try to stop sharing my screen. Bear with me.
Thanks, Renee. That was an absolute wealth of information. I'm sure that there are lots more questions and everything that people would like to ask. I just have a couple of comments here. Like I've been following the chat, and April posted some resources, and I will be sending the links and those resources out to you when I send the link to the YouTube recording. There's that. Another thing too, when we're talking about the justice process, another Zoom session that I have on my agenda for later on is just that, actually, the justice system. the difference between criminal court and civil court, that type of information. So that will be coming up. What else do I have? The Adult Protection Act. I do want to say something about, well, first of all, it is definitely mandatory to report abuse or suspected abuse, okay? And I know that the act is there for those people who, quote unquote, lack capacity. But seriously, very few of us, I would think, are qualified to judge whether or not someone has capacity. You know, so I mean, you have to be very aware of that. If you think someone is being abused, or you see someone being abused, and you feel that that person definitely has capacity, do you really know that? Understand what I mean? Because some people, like, take people with dementia, they can have very lucid moments and they're fine, and then at other times they're not. So just bear that in mind, okay, when it comes to reporting to the APA. If you're unsure at all, you know, report it to them. One thing I was wondering, Renee, do you have statistics on how many seniors access victim services? Do you know, keep?
I actually checked that in anticipation of that question. And we don't do really well at capturing statistics. I will admit that. So, but I did check for the last 5 years. So from 2015 to 2020, we categorize, so we capture age ranges. And so the age range of 66 plus,
Okay.
We had 487 individuals who accessed our services who were in that age range during that 5 years.
Okay.
And during that 5 years, we also had 22 cases that would have been categorized as elder abuse. Now, interestingly, as previously mentioned, it's a little bit subjective what people would call elder abuse. And most, that category would be an elderly person being victimized by a child by a family member in most instances. So again, that's why the 487 individuals who are 66 plus, they could have been victims of a multitude of offenses, theft, fraud, other types of violence. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Now I am going to, we've got about 8 minutes left. So I don't know if anyone wants to ask some questions. Leo, you mentioned something earlier on chat about the Privacy Act is often a major barrier to reporting abuse. I don't know what the Privacy Act is about. So do you want to tell us? Unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, good. Well, it's been my experience, as most of you know, I've been doing some presentations around the province on elder abuse and talked to a lot of seniors, a lot of law enforcement. And one of the things that comes up all the time is this whole piece on privacy. They really can't get the information simply because the Privacy Act interferes with that. And as a result, sometimes the perpetrators just go on and on with it simply because we just cannot get the information. I know of a case just recently that came to my attention where somebody had received a senior's income tax refund check. It's been going on now for about 12 months simply because they cannot get the information from the financial institution. And I understand that coming from that background. But in often cases, there are situations like that where it really can't get to the bottom of it simply because of the fact that the privacy part interferes with that.
And speaking from a police perspective, when you're doing that type of investigation, you need warrants. And of course, in order to get warrants, you need evidence. And it all comes into play.
I know, indeed. I know.
Yeah,
But often in often cases, it's the privacy.
yeah,
It's the privacy part when you're investigating elder abuse. The person has, even the perpetrator has privacy rights, and it's been my experience that this, in often cases, this is a major barrier. And I also advocated at the national level, at the National Seniors Council, that there would be certainly a statute that really focuses on elder abuse as a separate part under the Criminal Code of Canada. And I understand now there's some movement on that. Okay, Mary?
Thank you, Leo. Anybody else have a question or a comment or anything for April or Renee? Or for each other?
We have a question, Mary.
Okay, who's that?
That's Sharon from the Red Leaf Center.
Oh, hi, Sharon. Oh, look, I'm on Sharon's wall.
Yeah, we have a lady here going to ask a question.
Mary, the question is to Renee, if that's fine. Yeah, so Renee, what I was wondering was that you mentioned that, if you saw elder abuse, that you could report it or contact you directly if you had permission of the person. And I was wondering what constituted permission. Is it something written, or is that, would a verbal be fine? Just curious.
Yeah, great question. We wouldn't need anything written. So what I would encourage you to do is reach out to me if you have, if you're aware of someone who has been the victim of abuse and you've spoken to them and they're open to our service. Then again, preferably we would want them to call, so then we know that it's them accessing the service. But if they're a little bit shy or intimidated about calling and want you to connect on their behalf, then I would encourage you to reach out to me, and then I would be able to get the needed information from you in order to reach out to them.
Okay, thank you very much. And my second question is more to maybe everybody online, but maybe directly more to Mary, I don't know. But elder abuse, especially in rural areas, is often hidden, and we aren't aware of it. We don't know how much is out there, if there's any within our community or our region. Just curious as to where in other places, how do you increase that awareness? What approach would you recommend for small communities to make this a more open subject?
This is Renee again. One of the, again, our offices across the province are involved in, and most regions have violence prevention committees. And those committees from time to time do participate in public education events similar to this, or they might go to a seniors event, or they go to schools, wherever they might be able to present or set up booths and information centers. So that could be one option in your community or your area. I'm not sure where you reside, but that's what our offices are involved in. And I know on the Northern Peninsula, for example, there's a very active violence prevention, and our coordinator there has done educational events, especially during Violence Prevention Month, and as Mary mentioned, in the area, whether it be using the placemats or doing presentations on the topic.
Thank you.
Thanks, Renee and April. I think we're going to have to close off now. And it's too bad, because I know that this could have kept on going for a while. But anyway, that's it. And thank you so much, April and Renee. That was wonderful, wonderful information. If anybody has any other questions, you can send them to me, and I'll send them along to wherever they're supposed to go. Or you can, April and Renee already gave you their information. So anyway, we're still around, and we're coming up next week. We're doing Let's Talk About First Link, Our Connections Matter. And that is a program that was recommended by Dr. Roger Butler of the Provincial Home Dementia Care Program. Okay, so this would be helpful to people, you know, family members and supporters of people who are diagnosed with dementia. And coming soon after that, we're going to have someone on from Canada Revenue Agency to talk about all the services that they provide. And tax season is coming up, so there you have it. Anyway, thanks everyone again, and we'll see you all again at some point. Bye.
Bye. See you. Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you.